little more in depth about the Fabric of Our Lives project, in particular one story. So the Fabric of Our Lives is the project with these dolls. When I first came to Palestine to work with the YWCA, they wanted me to do a project with them that lifted up their work, that also had an advocacy ask. And so after some discussion, I learned that they were very proud of the work that they have always done with refugees. And the YWCA is celebrating. Did you go to the conference, the big conference?
Yeah.
125 years, which is pretty impressive. And there was maybe 600, mostly youth.
Oh,
right?
we had 2 youth from
Okay. And
I love that dress. You look like an angel.
so the work with refugees is really important to the Y. In 1948, when the State of Israel was formed, over 750,000 Palestinians lost their homes. Their villages were depopulated. They left. Many of the Christians also left, but a few stayed. And the ones that stayed, particularly as they were part of the 15 associations of the Y, helped out on the ground with the refugees. And so the first refugee camp in Jericho and Akko is associated with the Y. So out of all that, it was decided that we wanted to lift up a very particular demand, which is UN Resolution 194, which is the right of return for refugees. Now this is a phrase that comes out of international law. It is associated very much with Palestinian refugees, but originally the UN resolution was created for Jewish refugees, so that after World War II, they would be able to return to their homes as soon as possible. Now the tragedy is that that has never happened for Palestinian refugees. Jews are, as you may or may not know, welcome to Israel. Any Jew from around the world can go to Israel and become a citizen because they're Jewish. So they have a right of return that Palestinians who come from the land for generations are denied. So you have also this basic inequality in addition. So it was decided that it would be good to do a project. So my former life before ministry was in the field of adult education, literacy education, particularly the work of Paulo Freire from Brazil, popular education. And so I knew about how to do oral histories and action research, all this kind of stuff. So I did a lot of reading, and I came up with a set of 10 questions that I would ask the women from the refugee camp. So I was in a kind of scientific mode at the time when I started, that they should be uniform, these interviews, and then I'd have these big long oral histories. And then we would work with the women from the Jalosin refugee camp who did embroidery already for the Y, and have an income generating project for them. And we would study the designs of the embroidery from the area of the people that we were interviewing. So all the women are wearing, these dolls represent those stories, and they're all wearing the embroidery from the area that they were forced out of. So they're authentic. And then we decided to use olive wood because of what you said, and olive wood is very important to Palestinians. And we felt that it was worth it, even though they're a bit heavy, certainly heavy to carry around the country. And in the beginning, there's one doll that still has a face. We made them with faces, and then they look weird sometimes. The faces, some were carved okay, and others were not. The marbling of the olive wood also made it difficult. So I want to tell you a little bit about one particular story, because it kind of set the tone for what I ended up doing really through the 5 years while I was there. But before I do that, so you have the wall, and but you're missing a piece.
There's one piece, yeah.
Did it? No, you should have 5 pieces.
Yeah, there's one piece, it's in my office.
Oh, okay.
I only needed 4.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you should get it complete set.
Oh, I got
So it's really very wonderful for me to see it actually being used, because what happened was Mira, the boss, the general secretary, my boss, we were talking one day, and I told her how I had this little tradition that I had made up when I came home in 2011, that I had a small wall with my crash, and I would knock it over every Sunday. And she loved that idea. She said, well, could you make that for us? I said, yeah, I guess so. So then it led to a small book. I'll pull it out. You must have it somewhere. The book has stickers, It has the story of the wall, and so on. Now I'm in the U.S. and everyone's talking about the U.S. wall, the border wall. Not to mention the walls between people that have become so strong and prominent with our new administration. So, Darlene, would you be my guest in my little presentation? So, she knows what I'm asking. We've been through this. So this is Miriam. Miriam, yeah, you get over. So Miriam was the first woman I interviewed. She's in the Jala. She's from Beit Nabala. Beit Nabala is on the coast near Jaffa. And so everyone would recognize this as citrus fruits and trees, Jaffa oranges, that this is that embroidery from that area. So when I came, I had a tape recorder with me, I had questions, I had a translator, I didn't speak any Arabic beyond marhaba, kifalik, this is it. But I wasn't worried about that because I had the translator. And so when I come in, there's this moment with Palestinians. It's always, how are you going to greet each other? With men and women, one should not assume you're going to shake hands. Now, I'm trained myself as a pastor to always put my hand out. So, put it back, because Palestinian men, Muslim men particularly, most likely will not want to shake your hand. So then we do this kind of bow thing. But with women, a little complicated. You don't really usually shake hands with women and usually hug, but it's never clear how many kisses, once, twice, 3, sometimes 4. So I was kind of trying to get that all set up with Miriam, who's a very imposing woman. And so she kisses me on the lips. And I thought, oh, okay, so that's different. Alrighty then. And so I'm sort of taking that end. And then she does this gesture, which I'm going to demonstrate with Darlene, because it's a lovely thing that happened. So she comes up to me, and she just takes her hands, and she just holds me like this, and stares deep into me. For, I don't know, it could have been a long time, could have been a short time, eternity, a minute. She just did that. And when she was finished, she just pushed me away. Now, in a good way, just like, I'm done. Kind of like you pat a cat and then walk off. And I thought, what was that? The way I've come to understand that over time, that whole moment between us, was that she was checking me out. She was trying to decide, could I hold her story? Was I worthy of it? And the other way I looked at it was that she carved out this space so I could carry the story, both. And that's what that little moment was, pushing me like, yes. And then we sat down. Now I was about to get the tape recorder and everything all set up. And she just comes up to me, and like women sometimes do, and just starts talking to me in Arabic. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I put the translator on the other side of me. So Miriam's talking in Arabic on one side, the translator's giving me the English. all of that went into that newly formed space that she had carved out. And I tried not to worry about the fact that it was just this soup of Arabic and English, and that I would remember the important details. So I got rid of the 10 questions. There was only one question. Tell me about that day. Tell me what happened. And so for that, I have to go back in time a little bit to remember what she said. I'll share a little bit. I was 16 years old when they came, when the British and the Haganah came. Yes, the British, they've been our friends. They came and they started shooting. We didn't have any time to gather up our food, the oil, even the key. We just had time to get out. And so I grabbed the baby. I was breastfeeding. I just grabbed the baby. And we started running. We're running down the road. And I see a mother, a woman just like me, and she has a baby just like me. And they shoot her. And the baby is there on the road. And I see the baby, and the baby is on the road. And the baby is there. So Miriam's story from 1948 is this. It's about a mother and a baby on a road, a baby she did not pick up because she was running. And so she continuously goes back to that moment of wondering what happened to the baby. Did somebody else pick up the baby? Did the baby get shot? And as she tells us, she cries. And I realize I am in way over my head. I don't know what I thought I was going to be listening to. But this is, and the translator's crying, and Mary's crying. So that, we stopped. That was it for the day. And we get up to say goodbye, and we do the whole kissing thing again. But before that, she goes, take it, in English. I thought, okay, you speak English. But she was very conscious that she'd given me her story and did whatever she did with that carving out thing. And I was to take her story. And so the way I see it, we use this term in our religious world, our church, to be commissioned, church commissioned me, but Miriam anointed me. She found me worthy to be the bearer of the stories that I was going to hear. And so all of these women, very similar, nothing quite as dramatic as Miriam, would all come and start talking to me like this. And I get rid of all the protocols. And so right after hearing the stories, I'd go writing down as best I could. With Miriam, it was a little different. So I decided to bring a filmmaker with me the next visit because I felt there was more to her story. And when I came, she was dressed in this beautiful dress with red embroidery. And so she dressed up for the film. And then she told me she hadn't worn the dress in 25 years. So the question was, why? I haven't worn this dress in 25 years. That's still very new. Nakba Part 2. What happened to her husband, what happened to her son, and all the members of her family. Tragedy upon tragedy. And you don't put on a beautiful dress to celebrate life when life has been so hard. But this telling her story made her put on that dress. And then her last, her last time with us was we brought some people from Geneva, from the worldwide, and we were there, and she was telling a tiny bit of the story. She never went back to really what happened with the baby, but she does get misty-eyed, and then we learned that a young man had been killed in a refugee camp, and we had to leave quickly before basically all hell broke loose. And so I watched her cry from the past, cry into the present. I thought, this is the ongoing Nakba Palestinians talk about. It wasn't 1948 only or 1967. It's an ongoing tragedy that keeps happening. And so when I went to say goodbye to her, I was ready for the kiss. I'm like, okay, this is how it goes here. But she kissed so hard, there was actually blood that came. And she just had me in this bear hug. And I thought, wow. So I talked to a Palestinian friend of mine afterwards, a young man. I said, can you tell me about this? He goes, wow, you have the grandmother's blessing. That said, the blood? You know, I'm still very concerned about the blood. He goes, no, I don't know about the blood, but that deep kiss, that holding you, she trusted you. This very rarely happens to us, and we're Palestinian, we're family. And she, for whatever reasons, I don't get it, Lauren, she gave you everything. She gave you her story. Then she gave you her pain. It's almost like her pain was different than her story. So I felt quite honored. And so I did my best to do what she asked me to do. And what I asked, which is that you hear these stories and that you take them seriously and you work for peace and justice, and particularly the right of refugees. If they don't get to return to their homes, and we can talk about why this is so problematic at the moment, at least this history does not get lost. And that we are all conscious of what happened to this whole generation of people. So that's what the fabric of our lives. And now we've made bands that you can wear for solidarity. There's Christmas ornaments up there. There's an iPad cover, a Kindle cover. All of this you can find on UCC resources in Cleveland. So you can buy all of those pieces. And this little image here, collage that I did, called The Red Thread, is a couple of pictures of the women that I ended up talking with. So I just wanted to kind of lay that kind of out with you. I want to talk about, just using my pieces here, a few other things that you may not have heard of. There's lots of violence of different kinds going on there, but one of the ones that I think is pretty much not reported here in the U.S. is what's happening to the Christian community. And one of the things that's happening is that their sacred sites are being vandalized, as well as their cars, kind of horrible graffiti written. And so one of my friends who is a Jewish blogger, actually lives in Seattle, I call him my rabbi. We have tea together every now and then. And I know I'd say, Richard, when I would come, going back, so what should I focus on? He said, talk about the Christians, Lauren. Christians don't know about Christians. I said, really? He said, yes. And then I remember Zugby, our friend, he tells a funny story about how people would meet him. He's a Palestinian Christian who lives in Bethlehem. People would meet him and go, well, when did you convert? And he'd go, let's see, my grandmother's 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 grandmother was Jesus' babysitter. It's like, people forget that Christians are from this land too. And they were converted in a recent time period. So there were a couple of things that have happened since I was there, and this is one of them. So the Church of Loaves and Fishes, I don't know if you went there in your recent trip, in 2015 was burned in the summer by some very right-wing, ultra-Orthodox settlers who, a bunch of them believe that Christians are idolatrous because we have Mary and we have Jesus, we've got some saints, and that we're not really worshiping one God, because we seem to be worshiping a lot. Very similar to ISIS, really. So they came in and they burned the sanctuary with a very famous mosaic on the ground of the basket representing the bread from the loaves and fishes. And so for about 2 years, this beautiful holy site stayed burnt like this.
That's in Galilee.
Yes, it's in
Yes, we did
Galilee.
go there and saw the new
Yeah,
one.
that's right. So I kind of like the fact that they did fix it, because it presented this interesting moment of the story of abundance coming out of very little. And here was this sanctuary now burned, and there was this one angel who is made out of stone. She's all charcoal, but she's still there. And so she became, in my little artistic, theological mind, a symbol of hope. Like, yeah, she's burned, but she's still there. And so I kind of used to look forward to her. So the gift store as many shops, souvenir shops, I started to gather and ask for their broken pottery because there's nothing they were going to do with it. They're happy to unload it. So I got some of their broken pieces from the pottery that is about what's happened on the floor. So I wanted to make a piece that spoke to this event so I could tell you about it. And this design, this background, do you know what this is? People may or may not know. You might be grossed out when you know. You've seen it before, every day, in your house. It's a toilet lid. Yeah, so I started going through the garbage, looking for stuff. I decided that my art should be things that are broken or found. And what better place than to go through the garbage? So my friends were like, we are not walking with you. This is really awful. And the Palestinians especially, don't tell anyone more, nobody would know. I said, I kind of like the fact that, and it makes a very good surface for gluing, and it has a little hooks, you know, for you can hang really easily. It's very heavy though.
You can look behind it.
Yeah, people do all kinds of stuff. So this is one of the pieces. The other one that is its sister is this one. It's actually quite large. It's a stained glass windows size. But this one, I'll pass this around. In 2017, Beit Shammai Monastery outside of Jerusalem was vandalized for the 4th time. It was vandalized again this year. Again, ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, this time not settlers, but from the village of Ben Shemesh came. They're pretty certain it's them. This time they came to the chapel, 4th century chapel, with beautiful mosaics. It has supposedly the tomb of James. And they destroyed with stained glass windows the faces. They had enough time, instead of just smashing the windows, to just knock out the faces. And then they knocked over the Mary statue and the altar. And we came 2 weeks after the vandalizing event, and the police never had showed up, and they left it like a crime scene. So I took a lot of pictures and found myself quite emotional later. And so I wrote this, it's called The Thread of Mary's Promise, about Mary's Magnificat and how she managed still to be such a threat to the world for what she said. I'm pretty certain that's not at all what the people coming in to vandalize, had read her Luke's Magnificat, but that's what I did with that. So these are just 2 reflections on some of the experiences, but let me just stop and ask if you have any questions or things you'd like to know more about, or since you have gone, have you begun to speak about what you as a congregation might do to work on these issues? And I don't know who your congressional representative is, and if I was suggesting something completely impossible to do, because I've learned that in some places, when I make that, they go, are you kidding? This is never going to happen.
Fortunately, our local congressional representative, Earl Blumenauer, is pretty...
Oh, Israel?
He's good. No,
He's good. Oh, he's
good.
Oh, okay.
The interesting thing to me is that one of our senators, Ron Wyden, who has been Jewish. I didn't get this part. Diane was telling me about. He's authoring a law that makes BDS illegal.
Oh, criminalizing BDS.
Because going against Israel is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And my question to you is that the thing that I have felt is that Judaism was co-opted by Zionists when they came in to Israel, just to make it that difficult to criticize them, because if you do, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
That's not off the wall.
No.
Okay.
And this is very, that's one way. There's different ways to look at how Zionism was foundational to the founding of the state of Israel. But even, some go all the way back to Lord Balfour in 1917, when what was his title? Secretary of State? And he promised the Zionists in England that there would be a home for the Jewish people, but they would have to respect and support the people of the land, that the one could not. And so when, in 2017, when folks in Jerusalem and Palestine and Israel sort of, some celebrated Lord Balfour, mostly used it as a moment to look critically back at history, sort of what got set in motion there. And then later came about, and it's important to go, 1917, that was a long time ago.
Well, and when I was coming back, we walked through the airport in Tel Aviv, there's this ginormous poster celebrating the 120th anniversary of the birth of Zionism.
Yeah.
So it was in 1890s.
Yeah.
But the original settlers were socialists.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's,
Zionist.
And so some people really believe that Zionism itself is the difficult, the problematic. It comes because it so privileges the Jewish people over everything else and makes it absolutely ironclad that God gave this land only to the Jewish people. And sometimes, I actually one year did a sermon where that troublesome verse comes about the descendants of Abraham. And I decided if people like me, progressive ministers, always avoid that text, which is what you want to do, then it allows everyone to sit with it and hear that and have it reinforced. So I went into it rather cautiously from two perspectives. One was the feminist perspective. If the descendants of Abraham get the land, that means Sarah's son, Ishmael, too. So I use descendants language, let's include them. And then everyone's like, that's not what was meant. So there's that. And then you stop talking about Abraham's descendants and Abraham all the time. You talk about the children of Sarah and Hagar. And you just shift the whole framework. So that was one way. But the other was from Walter Brueggemann's work, and his particular slim little novel called The Chosen. And he critiques the whole use of that framework of the chosen, and which is, very important to Zionism, but Christians do it too.
Oh,
We're the chosen
yes.
because we have the Messiah, and that there's just a real problem with the whole issue of chosenness. So you have all of that there. I think this bill needs to be, we, particularly from the United Church of Christ, need to go after this absolutely head on for lots of reasons. One is our own history. I mean, we're all about boycotts. This is a main expression of our faith from the civil rights movement on up. We've had Wendy's boycotts, we've had Mount Olive Pickle boycotts.
South Africa.
But even the United Church of Christ here, boycott has been a faithful way that our church has responded to social injustice. And to have this First Amendment be challenged like this, to be removed from us, is not only against freedom of speech, but it's freedom of religion.
Yes.
And I think, even though we're kind of uncomfortable, I think UCC talking like that, because it sounds, I don't know, so religious. We want our freedom of religion, but it is. And I think that this is a leg to stand on, and it's important. And I think Jewish Voice for Peace, amongst others, is one of their campaigns. And it provides the church faithful on both sides to actually come together and do real interfaith work. Not just interfaith dialogue, but interfaith work. And I thank you for bringing this up, because it gives people who are maybe being criticized or afraid to speak out because they will jeopardize their relationships with the synagogues, the rabbinical leaders. You have a whole other Jewish community.
Yes.
Mostly young people
Yeah.
who are ready to work with us and have shown up for the UCC in particular, and actually all the denominations when they're passing resolutions. They are absolutely right there and want to work with us. So the other place is their other campaign called Deadly Force, which is about the ways in which the police force are using militarized methods, strategies, because many of them are trained in Israel. So they literally get free trips by the Anti-Defamation League to go for a week-long seminar training in Israel to learn strategies for crowd control, which is a lot about these weapons here, sludge bullets and so forth. Wit, yeah.
The one named Outlaw.
So,
The Portland police chief, her last name is Outlaw.
really?
Yep.
Okay. Well, interesting choice of names.
I didn't hear what she said.
That outlaw is the
She
name
went
of
for
the chief of
training in
police.
Israel.
Yeah,
That's
that's-
true.
And the militarized.
Yeah.
LBC.
So
okay.
what I know thus far around the country, there are a few cities, towns that have said no. Some of them you'll predict. Berkeley and Oakland, you know,
And
makes
she
sense.
came from Oakland, that's the strange thing.
Well, and then Durham, North Carolina. Now, do you have any thoughts about why Durham, North Carolina, and the entire country, why this town might say no?
Universities.
No, because that could be true
I
anywhere.
think so.
It's the KKK. It's one of the homes of the
Oh.
KKK. And I think the last thing African Americans in Durham, North Carolina want is a more militarized police force. They're already dealing with a lot of racism that has been really frightening in the past. And so they, along with very strong Jewish Voice for Peace, said no. And most recently, Northern Vermont, due to a lot of UCC activists up there and others, and my former hometown of Northampton, Massachusetts. Again, activists. So what I've learned from my daughter is that Washington has something about becoming or committing to de-escalation of the police force. It's not a law, it's not a bill, it's called something. Now, I would work with that. If that's true, if everyone's made that commitment, then you should be able to go after them to then, you do not need to learn yet more strategies that actually escalate violence. So that's, so if you're looking as a congregation or people for something to do, something to put your energy into, those are places. But I want to talk about one last thing. And it's a very difficult piece, and there's not an action step yet for it. In August, Israel passed on what they call basic law. They don't have a constitution. And this law acts like a constitution. It's called the Nation-State Bill. Have you heard about this? So it has some very scary things to it, which are important just to take in and maybe for further conversation. On Joint Advocacy Initiative website, which I've contributed many articles to, there's a section on apartheid and the nation-state bill, so you can read more about this. The first one is that Israel is a Jewish state. Now, maybe you all knew this already or assumed it. Many people have assumed it from the beginning. But you have now the Supreme Court, the Knesset, the body saying that Israel is a Jewish state, which means that the 20% within the 48 boundaries who are not Jews have no status or less status. And those are Christians, those are Muslims, those are Baha'i, and the Druze. The Druze is this kind of unusual group for us. It's hard to entirely understand their belief system. It has bits of Judaism and Islam and some Christian things. They were the commanders in the Israeli army, still are. They are furious because, hey, we've given our lives to this state and now we are devoted. So for many people, this is the absolute final line of an apartheid state. You just it's like Jim Crow. You just laid it up. Then you have that Jerusalem is the capital of the Jewish state, which is not true under international law. But you should know that the United States, since the 1980s, has also been on paper saying that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And Trump lived into that when he decided, in this administration, to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So he didn't make that up. There's so many falsehoods going on with the guy, but this actually is true. He lived into something that was already on the books. Congressional. And then Arabic is a secondary language, no longer official language, which is like just wiping out a whole people's history and culture, which may be why that little book over there, the alphabet book, is banned in Israel, because it lifts up Palestinian culture and life of a little girl in Bethlehem, of all things. So to see how it has implications are very frightening. The other is that only Israel has the right to sovereignty, which is like the last should maybe be first. That's a very big thing to say. That means you completely deny the Palestinians the right to have a state if they ever chose to. That they don't have that right. So this is a game changer for me and others, particularly the UCC Penn Group. We're all like digesting this and the implications of apartheid. And many people are using the A word a lot now. And the church has not. And the challenge for us as the United Church of Christ and also for other churches is back in the 80s, we passed a resolution supporting a two-state solution because that seemed right at the time. It seemed possible, it seemed like the best place for the church to be. Many of us, including me, don't think a two-state solution makes sense anymore. And so we're kind of stuck. Like, how do we can't undo a resolution. We're not sure what our polity is about that. We're pretty certain from John Thomas, the former president, that you can't undo resolutions. But how do we move forward, especially if we think it's apartheid? How do we, use our theological, political understandings of apartheid and get past this sort of business with the two-state solution? So I just want to share with you that this is the ongoing conversation that you're invited into. The others are campaigns. So if you need and want to do on-the-ground work, there's plenty of things to do. And then there's this bigger thing to help figure out, and be part of that. So you're all invited to be part of the UCC Penn Group, Palestine Israel Network. And Jeanette, is representing the group here in Oregon, and I don't know how you bring in new people, but you could share with people.
So I'd like to get on their mailing list, and then we'll notify you of, are you saying yes?
Oh, I think that's a good thing.
Well, we're currently small but mighty, and we'd love to expand our reach. So, yes.
And then you would learn about other speakers who are coming into town.
Yeah.
I personally hope that sooner rather than later, we get past going to talks just to hear celebrities. And there's more time for really critical thinking together, because I think the answers, the solutions, the way forward is in the gathered people. I think there's enough information now that we all know what's going on. Or you can continue to learn, but that we move past, I just want to go hear Miko Pellet again. I mean, he's wonderful. but you do know what he's going to say at this point, and we need to just dig in and do the work. And to be mindful of what is happening. The other scary part is Jared's peace plan that has been leaked thus far. And when that will be released, I suspect fairly soon before the new Congress comes in, right?
Before he's indicted.
And before Trump's indicted.
Well,
And Jared's indicted too.
That's coming.
So here's what I've heard from fairly reliable sources. And Tom, darling, please, if I missed something. Well, the most amazing one for me is that Gaza, little Gaza, will be what's left of the Palestinian state, which is interesting given how much bad press Hamas gets. But the little Gaza will be under Egypt. Egypt will be kind of like overseeing Gaza. There will be an airport and shipping link in Cyprus for Gaza, but not Gaza itself. Might have to do with that wall that's guarding now Gaza. The annexation, which is set up by that basic law that we just passed, is that all of the settlements will be annexed. So settlement products, banning them, no longer an issue because they're not going to be settlements anymore. So as wonderful as it is that Ireland voted to stop importing settlement products, it's almost, I think, too late. I mean, it's wonderful that they did that. It's a statement of courage and everything else. But when the annexation comes, there will be no settlements. That's all Israel and the entire Jordan Valley. So, see, that's like more than, that was 60% of the West Bank. So all of that is gone. What's left? Little tiny bits. Where Bethlehem is, Bijala, will go to Jordan. Jordan will reoccupy the bits of the West Bank. So there is no Palestinian state to speak of. So what Trump has done the last few months is take money out of everything. So no money for refugees, gone. 360 million. All the money for the Palestinian Authority gone, except security coordination, which means the money for the Palestinian police to coordinate with the Israel, the IDF soldiers, which is what leads to all that stuff about kids. That money wasn't taken out. Money from USAID and all the projects that they've been doing, gone, to the point that they're closing their offices by the end of this year. Hospitals, East Jerusalem in particular, have been under threat to lose their monies. 6 hospitals. East Jerusalem. So all this money taken, this is the thinking, push the Palestinians into a corner, and then they throw out this weird peace plan that I just mentioned. They're going to fight for it because there's nothing else, there's no money. This is the thinking. And then the other part is that maybe the enticement will be you can have your capital in East Jerusalem, which you've always longed for your entire life and generations before you. However, it won't be in the East Jerusalem you're thinking about, like where I live, near where the YW. It'll be in Abu Dis, which is this kind of poor side of town. And it's where the garbage dump is and sewage. So you can have your...
That's where they're moving Khan al-Ahmar.
That's where they'd like to move the veterans also.
Yeah.
So this is a dire situation at the moment.
Just being the passage with the ladies, and she said even the dogs, something about something.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
our issue, right?
yeah, the ceremony, yeah, even they, so that more than this. So,
And yet, I have to say, the Palestinian people are the most hopeful people I have ever met.
Yeah, that's right.
And they'll never go for this.
And they'll never go for any of that
They have
stuff.
to be totally enforced. I mean,
Yeah.
this is they would be 100%.
And they don't have the support of the Arab nations around them either, just in case you thought maybe there are some. So, you know, I don't mean to be so gloomy, and I know we need to come to an
Exactly,
end.
right, we're
We're into gloom.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Well, I think
we have to name it though.
we have to name it, we have to wake up to it, and I think you can't really celebrate this beautiful baby Jesus about to be born if we don't somehow wrestle with these things. And I think it's taken me many years to appreciate Advent, because, you know, like everyone here wanting to sing Christmas carols, of course we want to sing Christmas carols, we just want to get on to the good stuff, the fun things. But there are all these texts, you know, Jesus is a thief, end of times, and maybe that's okay for us, because there's certainly things that I can turn to in this country that seem apocalyptic and kind of on the gloomy
I
side.
don't mind seeing the end of something.
Yes, that's right. So, you know, there's many things to do, but on a positive note, the Church of Scotland is going to be an official partner of Global Ministries.
Yay.
I take some credit, I think, in forging that. As I said, if you want to have missionaries here, you're going to have to figure out a way for them to stay. And so there's other positive benefits from a relationship like this, so that we can continue to have a presence, so that you can continue to get frontline reports from someone in the field with our other partners. B'Tselem is an Israeli civil rights, human rights organization. It's one of our partners. They are constantly under threat, but do wonderful work. And so the church should feel proud of the relationships it has and continues to have. And this conference has an ongoing relationship with the YWCA for the future, which is something to celebrate and to lift up. So, you know, I think that was a wonderful decision that the conference made. When I first came, I think there was a decision they could support me in the mission field or think beyond and actually support the partner itself. So, anything else now that I've depressed you?
I guess something that I have an answer for is people will always say to us, well, they had their chance before, they didn't accept what was offered.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, in 1949?
All along the way,
All along the way.
you know.
Yeah. Well, the way are you asking how I might answer that? Would you accept if you had a country that was yours and your family's and an international body of colonial powers came and decided to divide up your country, and you were only going to get, 40% of what had been the historic mandate of Palestine? Would you accept that as okay?
Well,
And-
the Israelis have, the Jewish have 7% of the land.
Before.
They ended up with 56%
Yeah.
by UN here, so
Yeah,
that was a huge.
right.
This is something that we can learn by the Holocaust, World War II, it's plenty of
Oh, yeah,
years.
so we do.
There are all these Jewish refugees after the Holocaust.
Right.
No, we wouldn't have it.
And this is, Ilan Pappé is a wonderful Israeli historian, scholar, and I've heard him speak, and he always says this, is always very uncomfortable, because he's talking to predominantly American and Jewish groups. He goes, you're right to be concerned about anti-Semitism. And everyone's like, oh, we do it. He said, it's not just what happened in the Holocaust, it's what you didn't do afterwards.
Yes.
Because had you welcomed Jews, had you done the restitution, the reconciliation in your countries, there would not have been this need to ship them out somewhere, because Uganda was one of the places
Yes.
that was suggested.
Yeah.
Well, in Argentina,
Argentina, yeah.
So he
Bavaria.
and so he looks at, you didn't want us, you, these colonial, I don't know if he says colonial, but, so the mess that we're in is directly related to the powers, particularly England, but the entire United Nations. So the other thing that often gets, people get criticized for is like, why is Israel always being the one criticized by the UN? Because the UN made this problem. The UN must pay attention to the mess that it helped create by this partition and so on. So that's how I answer, and being as I have most recently in farm country, both in Washington State and Ohio, and gone out to these little communities. The people I'm with are pretty conservative politically, so I'm always very nervous, like how I'm going to be received. Thank God they like embroidery, so that's it's pretty. Palestinians may be terrorists, but they make nice things. So I'm like, I can feel that. But what they do get more than anyone else, because they're people of the land. When I talk about olive trees being burned or destroyed, or a wall that keeps you from getting your harvest in, they're like, what? I said, yeah, that's right. And also a lot of them are gun enthusiasts. And so when I talk about the fact that everyone's walking around with guns and there's a shoot to kill policy, these are responsible gun guys that I'm mostly talking to. I mean, they hunt. They use their guns for purposes. So they're not the ones who think you should just go around shooting at people. So when they hear that, they're very upset. And I love it because I'll talk and I'll go have coffee and the men all come up and they're looking.
They like that.
They're like, oh my God, those are real bullets. And they've never heard of sponge bullets before. And so they're like deeply upset, because I have made it into a cross. So they kind of take that in. So
when we were at the Mount of Beatitudes, that these little things that each of the Beatitudes set out. And the translation from the meek is one that I really like, because it says, blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the land.
Oh, the land.
Yeah. Which I think is right at the crux.
Yeah, the land. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I show that slide whenever
So I think we should come to an official end, and you come just take a look at things or help me pack up. There's a very particular way that everything goes back into my Mary Poppins bag, and you can help me with that. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
And if there's anything, as I'm officially still your global missionary until the end of this year, mission co-workers, we now say. But certainly anything after that. I have lots of resources to share with you, and Lenten reflections, and so 5 years.
You're moving back to the States?